Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you know that. I just like to remind myself about how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair, folks. I want to thank all of you. When we made the move to 7 days in content, I thought I was crazy. A lot of other people thought I was crazy, but not you guys. You guys came through. You've been listening. You've been subscribing, sending me DMs. It's because of what you're doing that I get to sit here and do what I'm doing. So I am very, very grateful for that. We're going to keep bringing you really cool content to keep you listening the way you are. And today is no exception. I've already had the pleasure of interviewing this gentleman on a different podcast, and we're going to talk about some really important, pertinent stuff to all of you today. So stay tuned, get ready, strap in. If you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, you know what we're getting ready to do. That's right. Got to take a sip of my preferred beverage. Mm. Man, that stuff is good. Just made a new piping hot cup of Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Folks, deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. It is an absolutely fantastic company, absolutely fantastic cup of coffee. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, including supporting veterans, which is one of the biggest reasons why we support them. If you're a veteran, I want to thank you and your family for your service. We love you, and we're glad you found a home here at the Power Man Podcast. One more time, one more sip of this. There we go. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Now, let's get to our guest today. Please welcome to the show, board certified neurosurgeon. That's right. And assistant professor at UNC and the host of the Dr. Kumar Discovery podcast. Please welcome Dr. Ravi Kumar. Doc, how you doing today?
Doing great, Rory. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I had the pleasure, like I said, of interviewing you on one of my other shows. And about halfway through, I'm just sitting there and I can't help it because I'm always evaluating talent. And I'm like, this guy needs to be on Power Man. He needs to be talking to my guys over at Power Man because the stuff you talk about is really pertinent, really important. So let everybody know, who is Dr. Ravi Kumar? How'd you get to doing this that you're doing today?
Yeah, cool, Rory. Well, my name's Ravi Kumar. I'm a board certified neurosurgeon and assistant professor at UNC. I practice as a neurosurgeon in North Carolina. And, you know, my road to this point was long and winding, honestly. But at some point in my journey, I was feeling like I couldn't understand basic health problems, even though I was a doctor. I had gone through medical school and this long neurosurgical training. And I felt like, hey, I still don't understand these concepts. I'm taught a certain thing in medical school. I'm told a certain thing by my own doctors. And the information still isn't clear. So I wanted to answer questions like, hey, do I need to go on a statin? Should I replace my hormone levels to those of a younger man as I have gotten older? What how should I eat? What micronutrient deficiencies should I look out for? All these basic questions where if you go to your doctor, they say, take a multivitamin, take a statin, just lose some weight and you'll be good, and generally that's okay advice, but it doesn't answer any questions, right? It just tells you what to do and you hope it's right. So I started doing these deep dive research, like investigations for myself to answer these basic questions. And I was coming up with a lot of like interesting information, stuff that I didn't even know, stuff that my physician colleagues didn't know either. So I thought, hey, what if I just put this out for everybody? Put it out to the world, clear, very easy to understand, like an actionable information for people who are trying to figure out what to do about their health and wellness. And so I started my podcast called the Dr. Kumar Discovery. And that's how I ended up here. That's how I ended up on your show, because I'm just putting out all this information into the world and people are listening to it. And it's been a really neat experience, honestly.
Nice. Nice. That was one of the things that drew me to your podcast right away, back when I first connected with you, was, I'm sitting there, I'm listening to it, and I'm going, wow, he's talking about stuff that not everybody's talking about. And at the time, I
Yeah.
remember saying to you, I was like, hey, this is a little edgy. I kind of like this, so, but you're all about exposing the truth of this stuff as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you had any blowback on that at all?
No, honestly, I mean, you would think I would, right? On social media, everyone gets blowback, right? I mean, you get
Sure.
get I hate you comments all over the place, but you get a lot of appreciation too. And honestly, when I'm doing, putting out this information on cardiovascular disease and male hormone optimization, a lot of my physician colleagues come up to me and say, "Hey, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me about it." And they went to medical school just like I did, but this is information that honestly is just not out there unless you dig deep, and that's what I've done, and people are pretty appreciative for it.
Sure. I think we talked about this last time too, but it's funny because the layperson who's not a doctor just assumes that if you're a doctor, you know everything because you're a
Yeah,
doctor. So you just know it,
yeah,
right? And when you really think about it, that's a pretty tall order for anybody
it
to
is.
know
Yeah,
everything about everything.
yeah. And I think
So,
I think that's an important trait, honestly, for doctors is to admit when you don't know something, because
yeah,
that's hard for many physicians to do, honestly,
yeah,
because you're looked at as this person who is, an expert, all knowing, and when you don't know the answer, a lot of people feel vulnerable to say I don't know. But I say it all the time. I say I don't know, but let me look it up. Let me figure it out.
yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that because you do kind of go at this whole thing also with a servant's heart. You're not just working on the hot topic of the day. You're talking about other things that matter to you and that you think will matter to your listeners. So,
Yeah.
I enjoy listening to the podcast. Now, on the podcast, just to prepare folks, it's not just medical advice either. I forget what you call it on the podcast, but you like tell a story of like where something came from.
Yeah. I call it tribulations. So basically, on these so every other week I tell a medical story and a lesson from it. And so it's still about learning, but it's about storytelling and entertainment as well. And they're a lot easier for me to do. They take a lot less research because I'm basically recounting a historical event and taking the lessons from it. And then the alternate weeks I'll do these deep dive medical research episodes that are, they're still understandable, but I distill the information and it takes me a long time. And so I can't do that every week. It's just I'm still working as a neurosurgeon and I have a clinical practice. And so to do these deep dive research episodes every week is just almost impossible. So I do those every other week, and then the in between weeks, so someone have some my audience has something to listen to. I do these tribulations episodes where I tell stories, and I honestly I think everyone loves storytelling because it's entertaining and we like to hear stories from the past, but also I feel like sometimes storytelling is the best way to teach. So
Mhm.
even in these deep dive research episodes, I'll give vignettes throughout the episode to help people hear a story and relate to the information I'm putting out there. So it's not just all numbers all the time.
Right. Yeah, for sure. No, I enjoyed some of those. I mean, I've listened to almost every episode of your podcast at this point.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
yeah, between
Nice.
last time and this time, having you on it, because I always try to listen to multiple episodes and get an idea, of things that are going on. But this time, when I was listening to your stuff, your most recent one came out, and I just listened to that maybe, I don't know, last night, probably that last one that just came out, because I was going in reverse order to get caught up. And it hit me really strong about, the guys that I'm talking to today. Do you mind if we dive into that just a little bit? That
Let's
most
do it.
recent
Yeah.
episode? I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Every time we have a group of guys together and we're talking about leading your families, we're talking about, regaining your power, your respect, everything else. All these things that we talk about, the TRT question comes up all the time. And you've got guys, I mean, it doesn't seem to be middle ground on this. It's almost like
Mm-mm.
politics. Like there is
Mhm.
no yes, sort of maybe. There's guys that are like, absolutely not, no way, would never touch it. And there's guys over here going, what are you, nuts? Of course, give me some right now. You know, so I'm curious. Obviously, I want to know more about it. Okay,
Yeah.
for everybody else, I also wouldn't mind, getting your personal feeling on it. As a man, as a husband, as a father.
Yeah.
What your thoughts
Well,
are.
I can say so. Testosterone replacement therapy is essentially, let's say what it is first. It's as you get older, your testosterone levels decline.
Mhm.
And testosterone replacement therapy is replacing your natural endogenous testosterone production with an exogenous drug. Essentially, testosterone cypionate is usually the drug of choice, and it gives you the hormones of a younger man in your later years. And so that's testosterone replacement. The question is, should we do it? should we observe the natural course of aging, which it can be a graceful process, and it can be beautiful too, because we age, we blossom, we reproduce, then we hand off that reproduction or the continuation of our lineage to the next generation. And that's very nice, right? But there are certain things that testosterone does for us that it's almost like a shame to say goodbye to as a man, you know? And those are your vitality, your vigor, your sex drive, your energy levels, your mental health, your bone density. These are all like cardiovascular health. I mean, these are your metabolic health, like so your insulin sensitivity. These are all things that are driven by testosterone. So that's why when you look at a young man, and you think about yourself in your 20s, right? You were vigorous. If you got injured, you healed very quickly, right? You just
Sure. Yeah.
bounced right back. You're extremely sexually driven. You're super energetic and wanting to, go after things with very little fear. Those are the signs of a man with higher testosterone. As we get older, yeah, we get more conservative and we take less risks. And these are all signs of wisdom. We get older and wiser and we make better decisions. There's no doubt about it, because if I was making decisions like my 22-year-old self, I'd be in trouble right now.
Right.
But there, so that's fine. But I am not my 22-year-old self in a lot of ways that are worse for me now because of that. And so the question is, should I replicate my hormone levels with that of my younger self? Is that something I should do? Because right now we have the modern medicine to do that, and very safely. And so that's why I try to answer in that podcast. And I think there's several things that we can talk about in that realm.
Yeah. Before we get into that, and I love the way you're approaching it already. And yeah, it's basically what you were doing on the podcast. So you're very
Yeah.
consistent. I like that too. There's a couple of things that I found surprising, because I think everybody knows that when you're talking about TRT, it's sex drive and maybe weight, and of
Mhm.
course, muscle
Yeah.
density. People
Yeah.
think about this. I think that's almost common knowledge with guys that I deal with anyway. What I didn't know, and what I think most of us don't know, is you're talking about bone density. You're
Yeah.
talking about your metabolic health.
Hmm.
I heard somewhere about inflammation
Yeah.
also. I mean,
Mhm.
is this all real? Like it really, because
It's all real. It's all been shown in clinical studies, clinical trials, actually.
okay,
Yeah. So what does testosterone do? Well, it does a bunch of things like sex drive and, vigor and mental clarity and all this stuff. But it also causes you to be more lean. It increases your lean muscle mass, changes your body weight distribution. So you lose fat, you put on muscle. It's Testosterone is essentially priming a man for reproductive success. And throughout all
mm,
mammals in the animal kingdom, higher testosterone leads to higher reproductive success, because the male is stronger, more assertive, and more likely to reproduce, right? So that's what testosterone is changing in our body. It's going straight into the nucleus of every single cell in your body and activating the androgen receptor, which turns on genes that make us more robust, essentially. So when you lose fat and gain muscle, you become more insulin sensitive, meaning you have to secrete less insulin from your pancreas to pull glucose into your cells. And that makes you more energy efficient. It lowers your inflammation significantly. And they say, live hard and burn out fast, but
right,
honestly, when you live slow and as a man, you succumb to degenerative inflammation. And so that's why staying lean and staying insulin sensitive through your older years reduces inflammation that's at the heart of cardiovascular disease, neurological degeneration like Alzheimer's, um, diabetes, bone health, or all your organ health. I mean, this is all related to inflammation. Almost every chronic degenerative disease is got its roots in chronic inflammation. So any way you can reduce that and keep your body more youthful, I think is worth looking at.
okay. So when we talk about this, it almost sounds like the super drug, right? Or this, the
Yeah.
super shot,
Yeah.
So I have guys who would say, well, then why isn't everybody on it?
Right. Well, okay, so that's a good question, right? Why isn't everyone on it? Well, that's because not everyone needs to be on it. And so this is what I would say, Rory. You should always, I'm not a pro just take a drug and fix it guy.
Right.
I myself always opt for, optimal nutrition, optimal diet and lifestyle measures to improve your health. And there are things you can do to improve your testosterone levels. Um, I think one of the biggest and probably the thing that brings down the majority, besides natural aging, the major thing that brings down our testosterone levels is elevated cortisol. So we live a stressed life, especially in the United States. I mean,
Right.
we're pushed to support our families, be successful in our careers, create stability on the home front, and that's a lot of responsibility, and that can come with a lot of stress. And we push harder and harder because we want to do better and better in that arena, and that leads to high elevated cortisol levels. And cortisol is released from your adrenal glands, which are right above your kidneys, and it increases your ability to tolerate stress. That's what cortisol does. It's like an adaptogenic hormone that keeps us stress resilient. And it does that by increasing your glucose levels, increasing your energy levels, so you can tolerate this period. But it was never meant to stay elevated for long periods of time. It was always meant, hey, you're running away from the lion, increase your adrenaline, increase your cortisol, which amps you up, makes you capable of tolerating this difficult situation. And then when you get out of it, then they just go right back to normal. And all mammals do this. That's why when the zebra runs away from the lion and the lion finally gives up, the zebra just goes back to eating grass right away because they had that initial stress response. They got out of the danger. Now they just tone it right back down and they go back to eating. We don't do that. We stay in this perpetual fight or flight state. And that elevated cortisol directly suppresses testosterone production. Because if you think about it, if you're in danger, the last thing you're thinking about is having sex, right? I mean, you're running away. You're trying to
Sure.
get. I mean, the last thing you're looking for is to procreate, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to survive. You're trying to keep your family alive, yourself alive. The last thing you're thinking about is going and copulating. So the but as soon as that cortisol goes down and the basically the environment becomes safe and stable, then testosterone comes back up and then you're ready for reproduction again. So this chronic cortisol high cortisol environment that we live in drives down testosterone. So one thing you can do, which comes back to this original question, is work on stress reduction. That will increase your testosterone significantly. That sounds easier done than said, right?
Oh no, I know where I get you though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, the other thing is lifting heavy. A lot of it, we all did it when we were young, right? But not all of us continue to do it into older age. But increasing your muscle mass just through resistance training, like lifting heavy weights 3 to 4 times a week, increases your testosterone level in spurts. So it's not like you get a chronic elevation of testosterone, but it'll increase it in these peaks and valleys that change your body mass distribution to more muscle, less fat, and overall improve your health. And that's another reason why a lot of men don't have to go on testosterone replacement therapy.
Hmm.
The ones I say that should seriously look at TRT are the ones who are so deep in the hole because they've lost their metabolic way, essentially, as they've aged. The natural decline in testosterone has brought them down. Inflammation through excess body fat and inactivity and high stress have brought them into this hole, and now they are in this vicious cycle where they can't break out even with their best efforts. That's where TRT is golden, because they'll start taking that, and all of a sudden they start leaning out. They start becoming more energetic. It's really like almost a miraculous conversion. That's why you hear guys who are on TRT, they're like, I'm never going off, because they're so happy with it.
Right.
It's a very high satisfaction therapy. And so that answers your question. I was long-winded, but that answers your question why not
Well,
everyone is on testosterone replacement therapy.
appreciate that. You mentioned some of this in the podcast, and let me also say, I recommend all of you guys who have an interest in this topic to listen to the episode because it's very detailed and it answers a ton of your questions. But I know a lot of you guys aren't going to do that, which is why I'm grilling the doc right now, just to get it on here a little for you. Um, the negative aspects of this, there's a lot of things that are out there on the internet. There's a lot of things that, people talk about, not really sure what's true, what's not. Is it true, for instance, that if you get on this, you like really can't ever get off of it because your body just stops producing it on its own?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's partially true.
Okay.
Okay. So when you go on testosterone, your your testicles stop making testosterone because they sent. So this is how it works. You inject testosterone or you put a cream on or a gel, and that gets into your bloodstream. And testosterone, a little bit, is almost always converted into estrogen. It's called aromatization. That estrogen goes up to your brain into an organ called the hypothalamus, which says, hey, we are good on sex hormones. So it tells your pituitary, which is right between your eyes, hey, stop making luteinizing hormone. And then when you don't make luteinizing hormone, the Leydig cells in your testicles, they stop making testosterone and sperm. Okay.
Hmm.
They stop making testosterone, and then the testicles stop making sperm. So you're good. Your body's saying, I'm good. I got enough testosterone. I'm not making any more. And so the testicles, they start getting smaller. In fact, that's something that every man who goes on TRT should know, is that the testicles do shrink. Okay. Even though you feel great, you feel very robust and like a man, like a younger man. But when you stop testosterone, your testicles have to come back into production. And that is very possible. That is not, I would say, if you're dosing your testosterone into physiological ranges, not like the bodybuilders, the guys with the huge,
Sure.
trapezius and can't put
Right.
their arms next to their body. If you're just dosing into normal physiological levels, like you were when you were in your 20s, your testicles will come back. And there's even some medications that we can take, like enclomiphene and HCG, which, if you're having problems getting your testicles to make testosterone again, will ramp them back up, and they will start producing again. So the answer to your question is testosterone does shut down testosterone production in the testicles if you take it exogenously.
Okay.
And the second answer to your question is yes, the testicles can come back if you did not abuse testosterone, which I never recommend to anyone.
Sure. Okay. And by abuse, you are talking about the bodybuilder situation where it's
Yeah,
just way over the limit of what you
it's
should be doing.
it's way over the and anyone who's seen someone, who's doing that, right?
For
I mean,
sure.
they're so unnatural looking, and we always think, oh, that guy's a man. He's at the peak of virility for a man, right? But those guys can't get erections. Their hearts become hypertrophy. They get left ventricular hypertrophy. They get horrible cardiovascular disease. They get acne in the worst spots on their body, and they're in a basically a state called muscle dysmorphia syndrome. It's like body dysmorphia syndrome, and they think that the only way that they're valuable as a man in society is if they have just massive muscles,
Right.
right? And so that is definitely a disease state, I'm telling you, Rory. And I would never recommend anyone to dose into super physiological levels like that.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
appreciate that you brought up the part about, the heart issues
Yeah.
and stuff because I've heard that since I was a kid, that was an issue when you took steroids and testosterone injections and things like that.
Yeah.
But then when you talk about taking TRT for in a reasonable level, a reasonable
Mhm.
dose, like you're talking
Yeah.
about, then it actually helps your cardiovascular and helps your heart.
Yeah, it does. So what it does is it makes you more insulin sensitive, and that reduces inflammation and just puts you know, so testosterone naturally increases LDL a little bit. Okay. And that is, and we always think of LDL as a bad molecule, but it's actually a healing molecule. It is mobilized to distribute building blocks to cell membranes because when you're on testosterone, you're building tissue. You're anabolic, and so, but it does not. There's the biggest randomized control trial done on testosterone replacement in men. Looked at 5,000 men. It was called the Traverse trial, and it showed no increase in adverse cardiac events in men.
Hmm.
So it is safe from a cardiovascular standpoint, and they've shown that in a clinical trial. There have been small but statistical increases in atrial fibrillation, kidney injury with testosterone replacement, but those increases are so small and they're monitorable. So if you see any adverse events, because you do have to be monitored when you're on this therapy, then you can either reduce your dose or fall back to your normal physiology again.
That's interesting that you said that
Yeah.
too. You need to be, excuse me, monitored to be, when you're on the therapy. But
Hmm.
they sell this stuff, for like at-home treatments, and they just send you the
Yeah.
stuff and you take it at home. So are
Yeah.
you not recommending that in terms of, how this goes? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. There's a whole industry around TRT now, right? I mean, there's
Right.
all these doc in a boxes that are selling medicine consults, and honestly, that's okay. I don't think that's that you should not use those services. They are expensive. They are more aggressive than your home. If you go to your primary care doctor, it's covered under your insurance and everything. But if you pay these services, you're going to have to pay $100 or $200 a month to just have them there.
Yeah.
But they are doing all the things that need to be done. They're checking your PSA once a quarter. They're looking at your lipid levels and liver enzymes. So they're doing what they got to do, and they're following up with you and making sure you're feeling good. Most of those people who will call you, or the services will have a nurse practitioner call you. And it's almost always a woman from what I've seen. So yeah, and so
Right.
you're telling them, yeah, I'm having sex a lot more and doing all this stuff, and that's fine. But like, it's a little less personal is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No guy wants to talk to a woman about all that stuff. So
I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe some guys are okay with it, but, it's just, I think what I'm saying is if you go to your primary care doctor and say, hey, listen, I want to know what my testosterone levels are. I want to see if I can improve them naturally. And if I can't, I want to consider TRT. That is a very healthy and good conversation to have with your doctor. And so I don't know that the doc in the box telemedicine services are necessary if you can just go through that route.
nice. I appreciate the recommendation. And
Yeah,
I do realize that you're not here to treat people. You're just here talking in general. And I want to
yeah,
make sure I'm throwing out
exactly.
your,
Yeah,
your liability claim here, so, but 'cause I know you have that on your podcast too, and I appreciate that. But I appreciate you also being willing to kind of put yourself out there a little and just say, hey, here's the story, guys. So, pay attention, use your brains, go see your doctor, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Very, very helpful. With what you do, and I mean, obviously, we're talking to men on this particular podcast. We do have 10% women on this podcast, and they're a strong little contingent. Let me tell you, very supportive, but very loud. That's right, ladies.
Okay.
I'm calling you out. You're very loud. Now, I love you. I love that you're loud, but you're loud. But they're here to support the men that are in their lives in a big, big way. And so that is who we're talking to. So, my next question for you is not necessarily in the TRT realm, but just your experience as a doctor, as a father, as a husband. What are some of the other big medical questions that guys are having, right now that you've seen maybe on the internet with that are getting some bad raps, or maybe in your own practice and
Mhm.
day to day. I'm just curious. I know that heart stuff, of course, is huge. Inflammation's been big, but is there something besides the big TRT question, which has kind of come across your desk and gotten you noticed?
Yeah, the statin conversation is a
Hmm.
big one, um, because I mean, I would say, can you find one of your listeners who's a man who hasn't had his doctor tell him to go on a statin? It's so, I mean, it's a ubiquitous recommendation. I and the thing with statins is they have major side effects. In
Hmm.
fact, statins reduce testosterone by about 4%.
What?
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never heard that before either.
Oh, well, so statins reduce your cholesterol level. Guess what testosterone's made out of? Cholesterol.
Cholesterol. That's right. I
Yeah,
learned that in your podcast.
yeah. So I mean, but that's not. I mean, it's more complex than that, right? Why statins reduce testosterone? But we're pretty much all told to go on statins, and they sell $15 billion worth of statins per year in this country, and the risks of them are underreported, and the benefits are over exaggerated in statins. And so it's a very complex conversation, Rory, but I generally, based on the data, vast majority of people in this country would not benefit from statins. In fact, they'd only get hurt.
Wow.
There's a small contingent of people who will get a small but modest benefit in, survivability in life and from cardiovascular disease with statins. And those are people who are at very high risk. They're smoking, they've had previous heart attacks, and statins show some benefit, and it's probably not from cholesterol lowering. It's probably from their anti-inflammatory effects, because statins have some anti-inflammatory effects. So that's a big conversation that I find is largely driven by a lot of misinformation, a lot of biased information, and so I constantly get questions about that, especially on social media.
Wow. No, I've heard people talking about statins. You get prescribed that for, is it blood pressure?
No, it's for high LDL cholesterol.
LDL cholesterol. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
I knew it was one of those and I was trying to piece
Yeah,
it
yeah.
together. I've
So,
never had a doctor tell me to get on it, but I've heard
oh,
all these guys talking about it. And I'm
yeah,
like, I'm kind of a big guy. I spread my
yeah.
wealth around here. So,
So yeah, what statins do is they inhibit an enzyme called HMG coenzyme A reductase, and that is one of the 20 enzymes in the cholesterol synthesis pathway in your body. It's a very complex pathway, but this one enzyme is like the bottleneck for the whole process. So statins are actually a fungal toxin. They come from, an Aspergillus fungus, and they've been isolated, and the fungus made these statins to kill animals. If you've got this energy rich resource and the fungus is eating it, they don't want an animal coming and eating it too, right? So they create statins to poison the animals. That's what it's for. Now, scientists have found, hey, well, if we give this at a metered dose, we can slow down cholesterol synthesis and not kill the person. And that's where statins came from. And what they do is they reduce your LDL cholesterol. And LDL is essentially a carrier molecule that carries cholesterol and lipids around your body to repair cell membranes. And one of those, the cell membranes that gets damaged all the time because we're hemodynamic stress, elevated cortisol, elevated blood sugar, smoking, whatever it is the endothelium. That's the inside of your blood vessels. So including the ones around your heart, the coronary arteries. And when those get damaged, LDL has to go up there and repair it, because you can't repair without cholesterol and lipids. Well, a lot of times what's happening is people are eating a ton of seed oils and other inflammatory oils that pack these LDL molecules full of oxidizable fats. And so those LDLs go up to repair damage, which we're damaging all the time. That's a normal part of living. And when they get there, they get oxidized because they're carrying the wrong cargo. And so the scientists were like, well, let's just reduce LDL as much as possible, and then we won't get the cardiovascular disease will go away.
Hmm. All right, we lost the doc for just a minute, but we got him back. That's right, because here on the Power Man, we power up, we power on, we power through. That's what we do. So, Doc, you were just talking about the reducing LDL and whether or not it actually worked.
Yeah. So statin does reduce LDL,
Okay.
right? And the thought was that, hey, that's going to reduce cardiovascular disease. And it just has been that the benefits have been modest to not beneficial at all, unfortunately. And they've even moved on from statins onto these other drugs called PCSK9 inhibitors that you have to go get an injection every couple weeks. And those drive LDL levels so low that it's like lower than a newborn infant, and people still have heart attacks on that. So, I'm not anti-statin at all. Statins do have their role with modest benefits in certain groups. But what's underreported is the problems they cause. So they cause myopathy in 10% of people. That means they're reducing energy production so much in your muscle cells that your muscle cells start to break down. You become weak and your muscles become painful. And a lot of people don't even know this is going on with them. and they just live with this like chronic debilitated state from statins because no one's recognizing it. So that's one of the biggest ones. The other thing is they are essentially mitochondrial toxins. They inhibit your ability to make coenzyme Q10 and heme A, two molecules that are super important for energy production in your mitochondria. You can replace coenzyme Q10, but you cannot replace heme A. And so this is something, people, what does that show up as? Well, cardiomyopathy is one. The heart starts to fail essentially with statins. And if you remove the statins, the heart starts working again. The brain is another big one because your brain makes its own cholesterol and is very metabolically active. So when you take statins, you inhibit the brain's ability to make cholesterol, which the brain is like a large proportion. 25% of all the cholesterol in your whole body is in the brain. It's a fatty tissue essentially. And so, in statins, they reduce testosterone levels. They can injure your liver. There's just so many different potential effects of statins on your body that are deleterious because it is a toxin, and that is not really talked about. And it's prescribed to people who wouldn't get a benefit out of it. So where you're at on this is you're basically, you may be taking a statin with no benefit and a boatload of risk.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so you're putting a small dose of poison into the body to counteract something else that supposedly is going to hurt the body worse.
That's the philosophy. Yeah.
So it's almost like chemotherapy.
Yeah. I mean, chemotherapy is meant to actually like kill off cells. And I wouldn't say that statins don't kill cells. They do. They are mitochondrial toxins. So cells in the muscle do die. That's what myopathy is, but
Yeah.
it's not like chemotherapy like that. Chemotherapy is meant to just freaking nuke anything that's super metabolically active like cancer.
Wow. It's just kind of amazing. I had a conversation with a guy about statins, and this is real. All I know from them is this conversation I had with this guy in one of my groups, and he was actually being told by the doctor, if I'm right, and I think I am here, that he was talking about getting on them as a precautionary measure
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
case, like to get ahead of what he thought was going to be a
So
bad
there is
situation.
no benefit of statins for primary prevention. End of
Wow.
story. The research is strongly indicative of supportive of that, And so, but Rory, $15 billion a year in statin sales in the United States per year.
Yeah. This is why we were talking about it, because he really felt like it was just a money grab.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're trying to sell me something right now. It's a
Yeah.
shame we have to feel like that when we go into the doctor's office, but that's what a lot of guys end up doing.
But, and your doctor, I wouldn't say your doctors, our doctors are trying to hoodwink us, I mean, this is, it's all about information,
Sure.
and this glossy, pamphlets that are given to the doctors by drug reps that show these large relative risk improvements in statins are essentially misinformation. And so the
Wow.
doctors are misinformed. And because they're misinformed, they're not treating their patients adequately. Also, there's a lot of professional pressure too. If there's a doctor who's not prescribing statins, sometimes the hospital or the clinic will come to them and say, "Hey, we noticed that you're not prescribing enough statins. That's the standard of care. Why aren't you doing it?" And they don't want to stand out, right? I mean, they don't want to look like the person who's, doing something different. So they get on board. It's honestly, it's a real problem. Do you know the difference between relative risk and absolute risk, Rory?
I'm not sure. No.
Let me explain it because this is like one way that we get a lot of misinformation in medicine, but especially in statins. So if you have let's say you have a 0.2% risk of getting struck by lightning, right?
Okay.
No, it would be lower. The 0.02% risk of being struck by lightning on a stormy day.
Right.
Okay. And then I tell you, hey, if you wear give you a hat. If you wear this hat, your risk of being struck by lightning is 0.04%. So you've had a 0.02% risk increase in getting struck by lightning, right?
Okay.
It's not much, but it's something. And then someone else comes and says, hey, Rory, that hat is going to give you 100% chance of being struck by lightning. And you're like, but Dr. Kumar just told me it's 0.02%. And they're like, yeah, it's 0.02% absolute risk, but it's 100% relative risk because 0.04 is 100% of 0.02. Do you see that
Yes, I see
that
what you're
trick
talking
that's
about.
being played there?
Right. So it's a war of words. I mean,
Yeah. So they did a study. It's called the Jupiter trial, and this is replicated across all the different statin trials. And they took rosuvastatin and they tested it on people with inflammation and heart disease, and they said, "Oh, this reduces cardiovascular disease by 44%." And so that's what's on the pamphlets given to your doctor by the pharmaceutical rep. Well, if you look at the data, that 44% reduction in cardiovascular disease was a 0.6% absolute reduction per year. Okay. So if I told you, hey, 10% chance of myopathy, certain chance of cardiomyopathy, neurodegeneration, diabetes, testosterone reduction, just feeling like garbage if you go on a statin, because that's how some of us feel when we go on statins. But you're going to get a 0.6% reduction in having a heart attack per year. You'd be like, hell no, I'm not taking that, But if I told you, hey, it's a 44% reduction, which is the relative risk reduction, which is a total basically skewing of information and communication, then you'd be like, ooh, maybe I should take that. Then that's how the information, and then they don't say, hey, listen, if you just walk 10,000 steps a day, you'll reduce your risk of a heart attack by 77% over 7 years. They don't tell you that. I mean, if the farm, that's 11% per year, reduction. If the pharmaceutical companies could bottle up and put walking in a pill, they would be killing it. But right now they don't have that. They have statins, which are generally garbage, except for a very small contingent of the population.
wow. Okay. I appreciate that information. No, because I know that this is something that's come up with a lot of the guys that listen to this podcast. So even though I don't understand statins as well as a lot of these guys do, this has been a topic of conversation. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you went there. I really am. And I know there's guys out here listening who are just shaking their head going, man, I'm really glad I didn't take that. I didn't pick those up. Okay. Wow. I mean, that's a little crazy. That's kind of like marking the price up, by double and then giving you 50% off. I mean, it's not where you want to be here.
Yeah, right.
But I always learn something when I talk to you on the podcast. So I appreciate you doing that. All right. So hey, I appreciate you covering these big topics for men. Your podcast seems to be going really well. Seems like you're, really getting a lot of this cool information out there. Like I said, this episode really kind of hit me with what I'm doing. What are the plans for the future of the podcast and for, Dr. Kumar?
Yeah, so I'm just going to keep doing it, I'm just going to keep doing research and putting out like good, clear, easily, like very easy to understand information out there. I really want to just give it to the world, honestly. I'm doing it for myself too, I want to learn this stuff that I didn't get in medical school, but I want to put it out there for the world too. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And I'm hoping that, people hear it and like it and want to, hear more from me and join me on this journey of discovery that I'm on, essentially. That's why I call it the Dr. Kumar Discovery, because I'm out there just discovering,
Yeah, right
it
on.
takes a lot of work and a lot of research, but I'm doing it, and so that's my view of the future is I'm just going to keep putting out beautiful, well explained information out there, and hopefully people will follow me and along on the journey.
Well, I love your mission. I really do. Seems like this would all fit together pretty cool in a book after you get enough of these
Yeah,
examples out
possibly.
there.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, all
Do
right.
people still read books?
Some of us,
Yeah.
maybe old guys like me who like
Okay.
to hold the pages, but I think they do. All right. I love it. Doc, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing all this stuff with everybody. How can people reach you, find you, reach out to you, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so you can find my podcast on any major podcast platform. Just search the Dr. Kumar Discovery and it'll show up. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Also, my website is called is DRKUMAR discovery.com. So drkumardiscovery.com. And I put tons of blog posts and articles out there reviewing research, and all my podcasts are listed there. So yeah, and you can email me. I have a contact form on there, and suggest podcast episodes or just ask a question. I can't give medical advice, but I can definitely give suggestions on what I think about certain topics.
Nice. I didn't realize you took suggestions, man. That's all right.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
I
Definitely got
mean,
to
there's
put
a
that
lot
out
of
there.
stuff to cover, Rory. So it might take a while, but yeah, we'll get to it.
That's great. All right. I love it. I absolutely love it. Doc, thank you for coming on here, for sharing all this, for enriching the lives of the men who are listening to this, and for giving us some really pertinent information on some topics that really do matter to the guys listening to this program. I'm grateful. I really am. And I appreciate you coming on. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, Rory.
Yeah, you got it. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason we bring these powerful men on here with these unbelievably powerful messages is because we are united in hoping that you find your power so that you can become a better protector, better provider, better leader tomorrow than you are today. So you can be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. The reason that we want that for you is because you have value. It's because you matter. And it's because you're worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.